I want to bring in Republican Senator Johnny Isakson of Georgia. Not only is he a senator, he's a former businessman and a member of the Senate Finance Committee. He's a good friend to the show. Senator, good to see you again. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be with you, Ali.
Paul Ryan's budget, Senator, is very similar to the one he proposed last year that you just heard Joe Biden criticizing, and, by the way, to the one that came up the year before. Every time Paul Ryan releases a budget, Democrats call it a voucher program that will saddle seniors with extra costs. Now, under Paul Ryan's plan, Americans who turn 65 in 2024 or later would choose between private health insurance plans, or they could stick with their traditional Medicare option. They'd get a subsidy from the federal government to put toward the cost of their premium. And the first year, the subsidy would cover the cost of the second least expensive private plan or the Medicare option, whichever is cheaper. In later years, the subsidy would go up based on a competitive bidding process. So Senator Paul Ryan pitched his proposals to voters in last year's election, and the Republicans lost. Why do we keep bringing up something that doesn't seem to be getting public support?
Well, first of all, I think we did a bad marketing job a year ago in the election. Let me just talk to you about what I think we ought to be saying. First of all, as you acknowledged, anybody 55 years old or older is preserved for Medicare as they know it today. Those younger will go to a new program of premium support, which allows the government to control the cost and the growth rate in Medicare much better than fee-for-service reimbursement, and preserves Medicare for future generations. I think this is a question of, do you want to preserve Medicare or do you want to lose it? Because if we do nothing, Medicare will be gone in the not-too-distant future.
It is a tough sell, though, because the reality is, in order to preserve it, someone's going to get cut, and that is going to open you up to criticism from Democrats who say that while you've got a proposal that is going to reduce some taxes on wealthy Americans, we're cutting people on Medicare. In fact, if the Ryan budget were to become law, wealthy Americans would get a sizable tax cut. There would be just two tax brackets, 10% and 25%, instead of the current 7 that we have. Low-income Americans wouldn't be affected by that. Some middle-income Americans would benefit, but according to the left-leaning Citizens for Tax Justice, the average millionaire making more than $3 million would pay $203,000 less in taxes if they give up all their tax breaks. If they don't, they'd pay $345,000 less. So, Senator, the problem with the proposal is he doesn't say where he'll make up for the lost revenue. Where do you get a sense the cuts are going to come from?
Well, in terms of the budget that was proposed by the House of Representatives, cuts are coming primarily, or savings are coming primarily from reform of Social Security, reform of Medicaid, and reform of Medicare, as well as cuts in discretionary spending, moving some of them away from defense and into other areas of the government. But the difference in the two budgets, the 10-year prospect of the budget passed in the House of Representatives is a $41 trillion in spending over 10 years. The Senate budget, which was just approved Thursday night by the Senate Budget Committee, spends $46 trillion. So you've got two differences. The Senate is trying to spend more, Senate Democrats. House Republicans are trying to be more efficient.
Let me ask you this, Senator. President Obama's trying a new strategy. He's reaching out to Congress. He's holding meetings on Capitol Hill. I don't understand why these weren't happening 18 months ago, but there's a shift from the campaign-style events that we've seen over the last month. I want you to listen to something he said to George Stephanopoulos earlier this week.
What I'm trying to do is create an atmosphere where Democrats and Republicans can go ahead, get together, and try to get something done. But ultimately, it may be that the differences are just too wide. If their position is, we can't do any revenue, or we can only do revenue if we gut Medicare or gut Social Security or gut Medicaid. If that's the position, then we're probably not going to be able to get a deal.
Probably not going to be able to get a deal. Senator, is it still possible to bridge the partisan divide now that Republicans and Democrats are really having to line up behind their very different, as you just pointed out, very different budget proposals?
Well, first of all, he said it may be that we can't cross the divide. He said may. That's an iffy reference. And yesterday in the luncheon, I was sitting 2 people away from the president when he was asked the very question about the quote on Stephanopoulos' program. And he said, I want to look at this as a problem we can solve rather than a problem we can't solve. And Republicans don't want to raise tax rates but are interested in tax expenditure reform like in Simpson-Bowles. That produces revenue, and as long as the president is committed to address entitlements, which is where the real money is, there's a possibility to make a deal. There will have to be sacrifice. There'll have to be a different approach. There'll have to to be positive attitudes, but I underline the word he used was may, meaning we could do it. I hope we will do it.
You are an optimist, Senator. That's why I like having you on the show. You're a businessman. You're also one of, I think, 8 senators who supported Simpson Bowles. So if you are optimistic about it, then so am I. Senator Johnny Isakson is a Republican from Georgia, and he is part of the Senate Finance Committee. Thank you, Senator, for being with us again.
Thanks, Ali.
Coming up, despite